The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You've always got time for Short Time.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine. The one and only Chael Sonnen. And you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
Now up on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, this one's going to be a tough interview for me because as an Old Dominion University graduate, I have to talk with somebody who is now coaching at one of the school's fiercest rivals in all sports. That is George Mason University, but it's got a wrestling program, so I'm going to put the allegiances away and welcome Frank Beasley, the new head coach for the Patriots of George Mason University, the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Frank, how you doing this morning, man?
Things are going great. Beautiful morning here in Fairfax.
So Fairfax, Virginia, inside the heart of the Beltway, political capital, basically of the world in a lot of senses. And you are now the head coach, your first head coaching job. And the ink is still kind of wet on the paper. What's it like to know? Okay, it's time for me to run my own program finally.
Well, it's great. I'm certainly enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun so far. I'm very fortunate to have had some great mentors over the years that have helped prepare me to be in this position, and I owe a lot of gratitude to those guys like Pat Popolizio and John Stutzman and Jim Beekner who helped to be here and to be a head coach, and guys who I still call and pick their brain as much as possible.
When people look at your career, and since you've been in the assistant game for such a long time, people are like, yeah, that Beasley guy, he's like the gem of that staff. He's the master recruiter. What has made this allure of Frank Beasley's recruiting persona so popular and pervasive throughout the wrestling community?
I've had a good team effort around me, good people to work with over the years that have made me look good in the recruiting front, and we've been fortunate to be able to build some great relationships. And to me, recruiting a lot of times comes down to building those relationships, and I've been fortunate to build some great relationships with some great kids who happen to be highly ranked and well known out of high school, and so that kind of translated into some ranked recruiting classes. We're fortunate to have the number one ranked recruiting class a couple of years ago at NC State, and several ranked recruiting classes over the last I think 11 years. So, but at the end of the day, it just came down to building relationships and selling our vision.
Let's go back in time. Let's start a little bit about how you got into the sport of wrestling. You're an Illinois native, and how did the sport discover you, and how did you like it?
Yeah, so I was about 10 years old. My dad said, "Hey, do you want to go to a wrestling practice?" And I watched WWF at the time.
This is like I'm going to stop you right now. This is like how every coach, how did you get in a wrestling story starts? Okay, now continue.
So my dad kind of tricked me into it. He was like, "Yeah, you like wrestling, right? Why don't you try this out?" And I'm like, "Oh, awesome." I'd be hitting somebody with a steel chair and, all that kind of stuff. And I got there and I'm like, this is not at all what I expected. And he knew what it was, and he knew what he was getting me into, and instantly fell in love with it. And so from there, the rest is kind of history. It just was an instantaneous kind of thing. After that first workout, he was kind of like, "So what do you think? Is this something you want to do?" Because there's kind of a well-known rule in my house that anything you do, you have to do it all the way. There's no testing the waters, no maybe halfway. It's either if you're doing this, you're all in or you're all out. And so he asked me after the first workout, it's time to decide. And I said, I'm all in. I love it. And the rest is history.
So about 10 years old, who would have been your favorite professional wrestler at the time that would have said, yeah, I want to be like that guy?
Oh, man. I liked them all. I mean, Bret Hart probably at the time was kind of the star, was the guy in the WWF that was the champion, kind of the smaller guy who was the technician that kind of conquered some giants.
The excellence of execution out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. He is Bret, the Hitman Hart.
Exactly.
Just throwing that out there. So When the decision comes as you go through your high school career and it's time to go to college, you ended up going to Lincoln College, a junior college in Illinois. And when you look back at it, what were your options for 4-year opportunities? What were your options for 2-year opportunities? And why did you ultimately choose to go to Lincoln College?
Lincoln's the last place I ever thought I'd go. I started the recruiting process very early my sophomore year, and I was like, by the end of my sophomore year, I want to know where I'm going to go, and that was my mindset at the time. And I started with every Division I school, and all however many 80 there were at the time or whatever, and kind of started working my way down. And I got to the end of the sophomore year and started taking a couple visits actually, obviously unofficial visits, and I was like, man, I don't like these schools. This isn't for me. And so then I had to totally change what I was doing. And I kind of added everybody back on and started from scratch my junior year. And again, I only really looked at Division I schools. I took a ton of visits between my sophomore, junior, and senior years, and I just never felt like I found that right fit. And I kept going to places and checking them out. I had some decent offers and some good connections with some coaches, and just never really found the place that I felt at home at. And so I go from, I'm going to make a decision before the end of my sophomore year to, I'm graduated, I'm a senior, and I don't know where I'm going to go. And my senior year, I had an assistant coach, Dustin Fouch, that went to Lincoln College, played baseball, and was like, you got to check this place out. I'm like, Coach, I've got great grades. I'm looking at some really good schools academically. I'm not going to a junior college. That's not for me. I spent a lot of time and effort to get these grades, and, junior colleges are for guys who don't have the grades. And so that was kind of my mindset. And then there was a Team Illinois camp on campus at Lincoln. And so I ended up being there for a week for a camp, and one thing led to another. I spent a lot of time with the head coach, Dave Clem, there, and just built a great relationship with him. And he sold me on his vision and of where he wanted to go. And I couldn't turn him down. So I don't think I officially actually decided until maybe August after my senior year. It was super late in the process. I was planning on going somewhere else. Like I said, one thing led to another, and I just kind of put off making that decision. I had a hard time figuring it out. It was almost a little bit of a cop-out, but, looking back, I wouldn't have traded it for anything, because it was the right place for me at the right time and with the right coach. And Coach Clem's one of those guys who I still turn to and talk to quite a bit for some advice, and he's been a father figure for me over the years. And so that's kind of how I ended up at Lincoln. It's kind of crazy. The last place I ever thought I'd look, and I was completely against going to a junior college, but ended up working out great. Some of my best friends to this day, I attended Lincoln with me, and just had a outstanding experience there and enjoyed it. Made the most of it.
And a lot of people don't understand Dave Clem. He's pretty good at the wrestling thing. He's NCAA runner-up back in '79, so he's got some knowledge. Plus, back in the day, it was unlimited. But what does this guy know about technique? That as a big guy, that people are like, wait a minute, this guy actually knows how to coach wrestling here. This isn't just like a collar tie and a throw by.
He coached it all, and he coached at, I believe he coached at Oklahoma State and Illinois, Eastern Illinois, before kind of getting a head coaching job. And he was right in the mix for the 1980 World Team that was boycotted and was one of the greats in the U.S. and heavyweight at the time. But he taught a lot of technique, and I learned a lot in my time there. I developed a lot while I was there, and I owe a lot of credit to him. I certainly credit him with the foot sweep that I have now, which is, as you get a little older and you got to wrestle with these young guys, you got to have some old man tricks, and that's one of the old man tricks I picked up from him. He had a nasty foot sweep, so I gotta credit him for that.
Now, as it relates to coaching, you said something about the junior colleges saying that that's for kids that don't have great grades. What is it? What else did you discover about your experience in junior colleges? Wait, that's not true at all. There are kids here that have. I'm a kid with good grades. I mean, from a maybe a stigma standpoint, did that change your opinion now once you got into coaching? That maybe there are some kids that have good grades that should consider the junior college option, if not for mat time, but for the financial situation. You got a lot less debt at a community college in some places.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. Lincoln's actually a private junior college. It cost me more to go there than it cost me to go to Bloomsburg out of state whenever I transferred to Bloomsburg, which is kind of the craziest thing, being in the state of Illinois. You think you go to junior college, you're going to save some money. It costs more than going to, Bloomsburg a couple years later. So I maybe financially wasn't the best decision at the time, but it was worth every penny. And
so Lincoln's the bad example. Let's go. Let's go find that state junior college, perhaps.
But there were certainly some very intelligent people there, and a lot of one thing that Lincoln did really well with Dave Clem at the helm is they sent almost everybody on to a 4-year school, and a lot of guys went to Division I schools from Lincoln. And that is one thing that he really sold me on is he showed me kind of his track record and who went where, and how many guys went Division I each year statistically for him, how many guys went on to 4-year schools, and he was really vested in the education part, and he really sold me on that. And there were a lot of very intelligent guys. We had a ton of academic All-Americans my time there, and across the board the team was held accountable academically and did a very good job, and so definitely wasn't just for underperforming students. Some of us, like myself, just needed to develop wrestling wise more. We had the grades. It's just, we needed somewhere to develop wrestling wise. And so I certainly look at the junior colleges while I'm recruiting and have some great relationships with some junior college coaches to this day from my time at Lincoln.
Another thing about the junior college, I guess the stigma that comes with it academically is D1s are less likely to look at a junior college kid these days because they're worried about the APR. With that being said, how does Bloomsburg discover you? And I guess that was right before the APR really was a big buzzword. But how did you get discovered by Bloomsburg? What made you choose there? And then how has that whole shift to recruiting junior college kids changed maybe at the Division I level?
Well, when I was going through the process the first time out of high school, John Stutzman was at Northern Illinois and had me on a visit. And I certainly had built a good relationship with John and really liked him. Just for whatever reason, Northern Illinois didn't seem like the right fit for me at the time. And so, I told him no. And then after I went to Lincoln, he continued to recruit me and continued to build that relationship. And I couldn't tell him no the second time. His one of his brother-in-laws was on the team with me at Lincoln. And like I said, he continued to recruit me. He would never forget. He was the only coach that would call me whenever he was on his way up to 6 a.m. workouts. And I was like, man, this guy's crazy enough to do something great and to, improve me as a man, as a wrestler and as a person. So, I couldn't tell John no a second time. And so I ended up going to Bloomsburg, and, my grades were really good out of there as well. And so, that kind of thing wasn't a problem. I had done well academically, and he had brought in a couple of junior college guys at Bloomsburg that had done well academically.
When you look at how your career went at Bloomsburg, what's it like transitioning from Illinois high school wrestler to I placed at the junior college nationals. Now I'm at the Division I level, and I'm in the PSAC, but Bloomsburg at that era didn't back away from anybody. You had a pretty tough schedule. What's it like moving from one level to the next, and how quick was the adjustment, or how slow was the adjustment?
It was pretty quick. I was prepared for it. At the time, Lincoln had wrestled a really good schedule. We had seen some D1 guys and went to a lot of opens where we saw some of those kind of upper level guys. We wrestled at the Midlands and some of those kind of bigger tournaments. Kaufman Brand was pretty big at the time. And so we were prepared probably as much as any junior college was for kind of that D1 level. And, it was a pretty easy transition as far as that goes. Obviously I still needed to continue to grow and develop as a wrestler and learn, but as far as, the workload and all that kind of thing, I was well prepared. And, it's not unlike going from junior high to high school to college, junior college Division I. It's just kind of that next step.
So you look at the way your college career went. You had an injury, ended some things, and what was it like to have to deal with not being able just to get the goals of being an All-American, but just to have the opportunity to compete at the tournament?
Yeah, it's one of those things. You at the time is kind of devastating and hurts you a lot. And with retrospect, you look back and you realize everything happens for a reason. And I think it's my career falling short of my goals has motivated me to be a better coach and to try to help guys accomplish their goals so they don't have that feeling that I had.
At what point during your college career did you believe coaching became a viable career path?
Well, I had always planned to coach. I thought I was going to be a high school coach and teacher, so my degrees were in education, in English and education. So I'd always kind of planned to go back and be a high school teacher and coach. And then once I got to college, I just really enjoyed the college experience and the process. And I thought, man, if I could be a college coach, that would just be the coolest thing. That would be great. And so once I got in college, I really wanted to be a college coach. I didn't know at what point if that would happen or not. And I always had the teaching and coaching to fall back on. But kind of at the end of my career, John pulled me aside, Stutzman pulled me aside and was like, look, we're bringing on staff and you're going to help us out. And, we want your work ethic and in the room. And, I think you can be a good coach. And, I don't know if he was just blowing smoke or he really believed that at the time and saw something in me or not. But, he convinced me that I was ready to coach. And so I helped out there once I graduated and I was fortunate enough to get my master's while I was coaching at Bloomsburg.
So a lot of people, they start coaching, and I don't want to say a lot. I don't have any scientific evidence to back things up, but just it appears like when people come from a school and they start coaching at a school, that's really all they know. What was it like for you to leave Bloomsburg and kind of leave the nest, so to speak, after finishing your career there, learning how to coach there, and then hitting the road, heading to Buffalo for those couple of years?
Well, it's always hard to leave, right? So, like I said, John helped mold me as a coach quite a bit and really spent a lot of time developing me as a coach those first 2 years. And the opportunity came available at Buffalo. That was John's alma mater. And it happened kind of right before the season ended when the job opened up. And he was like, this is an opportunity you got to jump on. And I wasn't sure if it was something that I wanted to do. I was really comfortable. And he really pushed me to challenge myself to go take that next step. And he said, look, if you want to coach, you need to go and get this kind of full-time job and the head assistant job, for you being, I think I was 22 at the time, something like that. He was like, to be a head assistant at a Division I school, you're going to be involved in everything. You're going to be working in kind of every aspect that you're not really grow and develop as a coach. You can always come back. You can always go home, that kind of thing. But when you get an opportunity like this, you got to jump on it. And so he really pushed me to further myself and develop my career. And so I took the opportunity and went to Buffalo, and it kind of happened really quick. Like I said, there's a coaching change kind of right at the end of the season. I think it happened the last week of January. And so I actually, talked to the head coach, Jim Beekner, that morning. Stutz had told me about it. And by afternoon, I had told him I was in and I was going to be there on, I think that was maybe a Wednesday or a Thursday. I told him I'd be there on Sunday. We had a duel, I think, on Saturday, and I said, I'll be there Sunday. So just tell me what I need to do. And in that process, the one thing that I probably should have done if I could have gone back and redone is I didn't talk to my current wife, Lindsay, who was my girlfriend at the time, before I took the job. We were, pretty serious, and I took the job, and then the first person I told is she was doing a work study job at the time, and when I was like, hey, we need to talk. I just took a job at Buffalo. It's like 4.5 hours away, and I think she was a little bit shocked that it happened so quick. And if I could go back in time, I would have probably included her in that conversation a little bit. She would have supported me, but it probably would have been a little bit smoother transition for me at the time, because that was quite the shock for her.
Yeah, and obviously you guys are married, so things obviously corrected themselves,
Hey,
or right, the
out.
ship righted. So, yeah, that's one thing I've learned in the sport. Happy wife, happy life, right?
No doubt. I've been very fortunate. She's been super supportive of everything I've done, and traveling and the long hours and everything else. So she's been great.
We'll talk about Lindsay here in a bit, because, yes, we follow each other on Twitter, so there's some interesting parental discussions that go on as you get older and have kids. So she's got quite the interesting insight. So as you spend a couple years at Buffalo, and then opportunity opens up at Binghamton, which at the time had been a resurrected program. Pat Popolizio had been tabbed with the coaching gig there. He was coaching with Dennis Papadopoulos, who has the best hair product in the game right now, still does, even though even at Binghamton he did. Him and Storniolo had a little battle in the CAA back in the day on who had the best hair product. But how does that relationship with Pat Popolizio start, and how do you end up at Binghamton?
Well, I didn't know Pat very well at the time. I just knew of him. He was kind of regarded as one of the best young coaches in the game at the time, and had really turned around the Binghamton program. And it was at a point where, I thought the opportunity to work with somebody like Pat would really help develop me as a coach and further my career. And so I called him. I saw the job was open. I just called him. I just kind of wanted to pick his brain and just get his philosophy and just see kind of what he had in mind. And after I got off the phone, I was like, I need to learn from this guy. I need to, this is going to be a good opportunity to develop myself as a coach. And obviously his track record speaks for itself. He was certainly been a mentor of mine, and I've learned a ton from him over the last 6 years. So I jumped at the opportunity to go there, and really it was about development for me when I took that job. I wanted to learn from him and develop as a coach, and I felt like I'd done some good things at Buffalo and wanted to kind of take that next step.
So I'm guessing you actually had a conversation with Lindsay when it came time to leave Buffalo.
Yeah, definitely did. I learned my lesson the first time. So then she was always the first person I talked to after that point, whenever I had looked at, considered, or had heard about any openings that was even anything that was on my radar. I made sure that I talked with her first because her support is instrumental in everything I do.
So NC State job opens up. Pat is being sought after, as you said. He's one of the best young coaches in the country. Had brought Binghamton back from basically there was no program. They bring him in after Tony Roby for a year. All Americans are hitting the podium. Some guy named Gwizdowski's doing pretty well at Binghamton. Justin Lister had that awesome run that year, unseeded, and so Pat's being lured by a Power 5 school, the ACC. I mean, at the back of your mind, were you thinking, okay, well, I'm probably going to be here at Binghamton while Pat's off to bigger and better things, or was it like, hey, yo, I got it, we're going, you're coming with me?
Well, I was fortunate. He included me in kind of in what was going on, and, kind of told me whenever he had gotten a call from them, and we were pretty close, and he kind of included me in every step of that process. And once he took that job, or once I think it was before he took the job, he was like, I didn't know what his plan was, and he was like, I'm going to need somebody I can count on, or are you in? And I think that was before he officially took the job, and I jumped at the opportunity. I'd only been coaching with him less than a year, and there's just so much more I wanted to learn from him, and I was very fortunate to be able to go to NC State with him and continue to learn from him, and I definitely grew a lot, not just in that year at Binghamton, but in the next 5 at NC State. Learning from him and getting to pick his brain and see the way he ran things and operated, and everybody's kind of got different viewpoints, philosophies, and every coach has to kind of determine their own. I still had more I needed to learn from Pat at that point, so when he kind of offered me a position, I jumped at the opportunity.
We kind of know how the NC State thing has finished out. Obviously, the performances your team has had, just a monster dual meet performances, killer recruiting classes. I don't know, guys that win world medals and NCAA titles that do a pretty good job. But when you look at now, looking at your position at George Mason, you have wrestled at the junior college level. You've wrestled in the EWL. You've coached in the EWL. You've coached in the MAC. You've coached in what used to be the CAA. You've coached in the ACC. Now you're back in the EWL at a state school in Northern Virginia. You've had kind of a very diverse coaching background when it comes to resources and things of that nature. So when you look at what you come from at Bloomsburg, to having Power 5 resources at the ACC, to now back to doing it on your own as your first head coaching job, what do you think is going to be your biggest hurdle for not individual success at George Mason, but just making sure you get comfortable in being able to run a program by yourself?
Well, I feel like I've been ready to take over a program for a few years now. It's just a matter of, I wanted to find the right program and at the right time. And, it wasn't something I just wanted to jump into and just to be a head coach or, whatever it is. I wanted to find the right program at the right time. And I certainly wanted to leave NC State on the right foot and better than where I went there at. And, I think they're going to have a killer year. I'm excited to watch those guys. But I think this is really be a breakthrough year for them. And, I just think that there's so many great opportunities here. It was something I couldn't pass up. And, I think the biggest hurdle is just I need to get more people connected to the program. I need to get more alumni back to matches, more students at matches, more alumni donating and helping out the program behind the scenes and whatever way that is. Maybe it's donating time, maybe it's donating money, whatever it is. But, we need to have the alumni vested in the program and completely connected. And there's a great group of alumni that are already, but it's getting all the others that aren't right now, that there is a little bit of separation. So, I think that's the most important thing at this point for the program is getting the alumni, really vested and connected back in the program.
Is one thing, maybe because you've been part of building processes, was an alluring fact about George Mason that there is some work that needs to be done versus coming in and having all the hard work already done for you? Like, oh yeah, I'm walking into millions of dollars of facilities and scholarships and such. Or do you feel like there's okay, I got something I need to build here?
No, absolutely. That's fun. Building something is fun. And Joe Russell left a great foundation here, and he really built from where they were before he got here. And but there's still a lot of work to do, and I'm excited about the building process. I think that's to be the first at something is special, and that's something at NC State. Nick Wisdowski was the first two-time national champion. Things like that, and it's just special, and I'm excited to have those guys here that are the first 3-time, 4-time All-American, the first NCAA semifinalist, the first NCAA champion, and those kind of things, the first top 25, top 20, top 10 team. And I'm excited to build those things. But that was definitely an allure. It is nice to have kind of all the resources and have a great team like we had at NC State this year, but and that's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of fun to coach those high level guys, to be able to coach Wisdowski at the world championships and that kind of thing it's a lot of fun. But it's really fun to build. And that was something that was definitely alluring and exciting for me and something that I wanted to do was I really wanted to build a program and leave my fingerprints on a program.
Yeah, you mentioned Gwiazdowski in the World Championships in Paris, and that's definitely something I want to touch on, so we might as well do it now. What is that moment like for you? I guess that's the question. What's that moment like for you?
It was incredible. It's somewhere, I didn't know if I would ever coach in a World Championship. I certainly wanted to, but getting that opportunity was very unique, is special. I learned a lot through that process, but it was just it was a real learning process. I mean, it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I wouldn't trade it for the world, and hope to coach more guys through the World Championships.
So now focusing on George Mason type of school, because this is not a school that's been on everybody's radar when it comes to wrestling. I'm sure there's one of these questions like, oh, are they D1? If they're paying attention to all sports, yes, they know about the Final Four run a couple years ago and the strong basketball teams that the school has had, as hard as that is for me to say, being an ODU alum. But when we look at the demographics, it's a pretty much an urban school. It's in a bustling area of Fairfax, actually a really cool area of Fairfax. Matter of fact, Brian Hazard, the head coach at Robinson Secondary, is like basically across the street. There's a place called Brian's Grill across the street that's actually pretty cool from what used to be known as the Patriot Center. I'm not sure what the name of it is now, but just talk a little bit about what type of school it is and how do you think it's attractive for wrestlers that want to wrestle at the Division I level that may not want a giant Power 5 type of atmosphere.
Well, it's not at all what I expected it to be when I first had heard of George Mason. I thought it was going to be kind of a smaller school, maybe a private school, that kind of thing. And come to find out, there's almost 38,000 students. It's one of the fastest growing schools in the country in enrollment. I think it's one or two, number one or two fastest growing school in the country. It started in 1972, so it's got a very short history. A lot of schools are 100, 150, 200 years old. It's a very young school, but like I said, it started in 1972 with a class of 17 people, and to grow into a school of 38,000 students is incredible. How fast that happened, and it's not just the growth of the student body, but the academic growth. From being a little commuter college to being a Tier 1 academic school, which has happened just in the last year or so. So it's pretty interesting how fast things have grown, and now we got to do that with the wrestling program. The basketball team made it to the Final Four about 10 years ago. They've won 2 team national titles in soccer and track and field. And now it's time for wrestling to really emerge as the premier sport here. And so that's our plan. That's my plan anyway, to be kind of the face of the athletic department. And I think the resources are in place for that to happen. I think for a high school kid to come here with the area, there's so many job opportunities and internships. And, one of the big things that really drew me is there's so many alumni that are right here in the area that have great jobs and are in great positions to help our student athletes with internships and job opportunities down the line. And I was blown away by how many alumni are right here in the area with great jobs.
Yeah, you also talk about alumni, that it is a young school, and I mentioned Brian Hazard. He's a wrestling alum, but there's other guys. Johnny Curtis was a 2-time All-American, the school's only 2-time All-American. He coaches not that far away at a school up in Northern Virginia. I think it's at Battlefield, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And then you also look at, actually, I believe with previous George Mason head coach Brian Schaefer, if my facts are correct.
That is correct.
All right, and then Kurt McHenry's dad wrestled at George Mason, so not saying anything about recruiting or anything of that nature, but like I said, there is a good wrestling alumni base up in Northern Virginia. And when you talk about the age of the school, what is the goals of making George Mason events truly events like you guys did at North Carolina State?
Absolutely. We want to pack out the gym. So we're at the Rack, which is a smaller gym. We want to get to the point where we're packing that out, and we have to go to Eagle Bank Arena, which is where the All-Star match was held a few years ago here on campus. It seats about 10,000. We want to get to the point where we have to have our matches in there. It's going to take some time, but we'll get there, and we got to make those matches events. And I've got some ideas to do that. It's going to take time to implement, but not unlike what we did at NC State with making some all of our home matches some kind of event, and now obviously they're taking the next step and going internationally there. So pretty neat, some of the things that Pat's doing there.
All right, so one thing I want to know, and you mentioned the All-Star Classic, and usually I get I have nightmares when I think about Eagle Bank Arena, what used to be the Patriot Center, because I've sat there for many a disheartening basketball moment, which again we returned to favor when it came to going to the Ted Constant Center. But the Green Machine, how much do you know about Doc Nix and his crew, and how much are you going to try to get them involved in wrestling? And in case you don't know what I'm talking about, folks, it's the best pep band in the country. It is the absolute best. And again, that pains me to say that as an ODU grad, but these guys are fantastic.
Yeah, I think you said it all right there. They're the number one band in the country. So, you can't top that, and we've got to get them out to some matches. And we will, it's one of those things to take, it'll take a little bit of time to get everything in place. But, like I said, matches here then become events, and they're going to be a big part of that because obviously we want the best associated with George Mason Wrestling, and they're at the top of that list is best bands.
We talk about getting the job. This was quick. I mean, you're coming off the World Championships where you're wearing NC State gear and Team USA gear, coaching Nick Gwizdowski, to less than a month later, it's like, oh yeah, I'm the new coach at George Mason. And, the process wasn't really as aired out as some of these coaching hires are, especially like things like, Oklahoma. There was talk, Lou Rosselli had a quick turnaround when he went from the Olympics to, coaching at OU. When you decide to make the decision, obviously there's a discussion with Lindsay again, but what do you tell Pat when they make you the offer?
Well, obviously, throughout the process, I was talking to Pat about it and, sought out his advice and he kind of knew where I was every step of the way through the process. So, I certainly, he kind of knew what my thoughts were from day one of contact with George Mason up till taking the position. And, he was definitely a good resource and gave me some good questions to ask and some insights. But yeah, I just up front with them and told them how I felt. And then obviously, when I got the offer, I talked with Lindsay, and then the next thing I did is I drove over to Pat's house to talk to him before, making that decision, making that call.
Now, as you walk into this job, the schedule was pretty much set, so you didn't have a whole lot, if any, wiggle room. But as I look over your home schedule, for a first-year coach coming into something, it's not like you've got, I got 3 home events. You've got a pretty good home slate. Oregon State comes to visit your alma mater, Bloom, Davidson from the Southern Conference, Lock Haven with a high school duel, with it, Clarion, F&M, American, VMI. You've got winnable duels at home and enough home duels to try to bring people in that first year. So what's that first year schedule goal going to be?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is I want to implement my vision and philosophy here, right? And certainly we want to win and win at a high level, but it's going to take some time. I would like to have a winning record this first year in duels, and I think Joe set a solid schedule for success this year, and I think that's a realistic goal for the team.
So with what you've got in there, there's expected to be some turnover when coaching staffs happen and things like that. But what have you got from the short time you've been with the kids to say, all right, you know what, I can work with this here?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's always a little bit of attrition when a new coach comes in, right? But there's a really good core group of guys who bought in. I asked for blind faith my first day here as I gave my vision and philosophy, expectations. And I said, kind of jumping in this, the school year's already started, and I'm asking for you guys to buy in and have some blind faith in me and vice versa. And we're going to do some great things together. And, as I laid out my expectations for them, there's a really good core group of guys who basically were just like, I'm in. Tell me what I need to do. I'll do it. And so I've been really encouraged by the work that these guys have been putting in the last, I guess, 2 weeks today since I've been officially on the job. So definitely been encouraged by the character of the kids here and by the work they've been putting in.
I talk about your administration. One thing I know about the George Mason facilities, the wrestling room's definitely not very big, and I'm assuming you've got plans to try to push for new facilities eventually. But you've got an AD with an interesting background. His name is Brad Edwards, and for you pro football fans, you might recognize that name as he was a member of the Washington Redskins. Again, this is problematic for me, Frank, because I don't even like the Redskins either. So your admins are really going to love this show. So anyway, but Brad brings an interesting background to being an athletic director as a professional athlete, but he's been at other schools, including Newberry, which has wrestling. So when you look at the administration standpoint, what was their message to you when with the hiring process, and what did they expect from you as a program beyond your own personal goals of winning. But, where does Mason see this program from an administrative standpoint, and what are they going to do to help you?
Yeah, so when I met with Brad Edwards on the interview, I walked out of his office, and that was the last meeting of the day. And I called my wife, and I said, this is a guy who I need to work with. This is the guy I need to work for. I mean, he's just a sharp guy, has a great vision for this program. He wants to see this program take off, and he's behind the program 100%, And, there's a lot of work that we need to do. And that's one thing he really impressed upon me is, it's not necessarily all work that I need to do. It's work that we need to do. And this is a team, and we're going to build this together. And, he's going to be supportive and help me to get everything that we need to be one of the best teams in the country. So, the opportunities here, we're going to work to build, and he's definitely all in for wrestling and cares about the sport and wants to make, matches, events. He wants to see us have multiple All-Americans every year. He wants to see us competing to win the academic award each year at the NWCA. I mean, he's all in, and obviously, we might not have all the resources that basketball has and that kind of thing, but his vision is that wrestling is a sport that can be great here, and wrestling is a sport that can really have the national profile for the university, and that's something he really impressed upon me when we met was that wrestling is a sport that we can really be great in here, more than anybody.
The formal portion of the interview has ceased. Now we're going to have the fun part. It's the short time, rapid fire, whatever you want to call it. I guess call it short time on short time. 10 questions, 90 seconds. You ready for the challenge?
Bring it on.
Yeah, and I don't want you to think about these. First thing that comes to your mind, like question 1, who's your favorite person to follow on Twitter?
Hayden Hyben.
False. Should be your wife. That's always the correct answer. Question 2, you win the Olympic gold. What are you having for dinner?
Probably a steak with cottage cheese and a baked potato.
Okay, I'd go more with the blue cheese versus the cottage cheese, but I feel you. I feel you. So, question 3, who's the best wrestler people don't talk about?
Now, I'm going to give a 2 homer picks, Pete Renda and Kevin Jack.
All right, I like it. I think people are going to be talking about both of those guys a lot this year. Question 4, all-time favorite flavor of Gatorade?
Glacier Freeze, I think it's called.
That's a good one. I don't drink much Gatorade anymore, but I recall that one being good. Question 5, favorite video game of all time?
Anything from the regular Nintendo, probably Super Mario Brothers 3 or 1.
Yeah, 3's a good one. I'm retro gaming myself. I got a Raspberry Pi with some stuff. Matter of fact, I just ordered 2 wireless controllers so my wife can beat me down incessantly again in Dr. Mario. She crushes me. Anyway, question 6, your favorite international wrestler outside of Nick Gwiazdowski?
Man, I'm gonna go with the Gould because I've studied him so much over the last couple years in preparation to wrestle him. I'm gonna say him just because I've probably watched more video of him than anybody.
Question 7, what food spot will you miss the most in Raleigh?
That's a tough question right there. Probably Bravos.
All right, I'm not going to throw under the bus on this one, and you better not either. What food spot will your wife miss the most in Raleigh?
Cantina 18.
That was not a hard decision for you to make there. Okay, question 8. If there's one guy in history, whether he's a historical figure or a wrestler, you would like to wrestle, who would it be?
Abe Lincoln.
Most common answer on the program, by the way. Question 9, your funniest teammate of all time?
Funniest teammate? Steve Wagner.
Why, where, and give me a story.
He was on the team at Lincoln College with me. He was a guy who he was just a hilarious guy. He would eat pizza and drink Mountain Dew before matches, and he wrestled really hard. And he ate like crap all the time, and it was just every time somebody'd say something to him, he just had an attitude about it, and it was just like, well, have somebody that can wrestle harder than me then. Have somebody that can sprint harder than me, and just the funny guy.
And question 10, how many times has Melissa Simmons saved the NC State wrestling program from complete collapse?
Too many times to count.
Had to throw that in there. So, Frank, you're out of the hot seat, whatever. Short time is short time. All right, Frank, no more Mason jokes from this Old Dominion grad. We wish you best of luck there in Fairfax, and we'll see you down the line.
Appreciate it. And just want to say, our mantra for George Mason Wrestling is to be uncommon.
Frank Beasley, ladies and gentlemen, that guy is going to do a good job at that school in Fairfax. That since we're done interviewing, I don't have to say it anymore. No, just kidding. Go back in time, even when I was a student at Old Dominion, Coach Brian Schaefer, Mark Weeder, Joe Russell, and now Frank, a line of really good people that have been at the helm of that program. So moving forward, just getting back from Rochester, Minnesota, the wrestling capital of Minnesota for the U23 World Team Trials. Had a chance to call those with Shane Sparks on TrackWrestling.com. Had a lot of fun. Of course, the highlight of it is probably the most hype match coming in was Dayton Fix and Nathan Tomasello. Tight win at the end for match 1. Fix had a little too much in match 2, and the future's bright for that young man. Of course, we know that because he won a Junior World Championship. But chances are, smart money is on that we won't see him on the college mats this year with Piccinini at 25, Cade Brock at 33. Dean Heil being a senior. When he graduates, Brock moves up. So Fix and Piccinini can go 25, 33, whichever they want. That's the common, I guess, thought process on it, but you never know. John Smith has been known to pull people out on a whim if he thinks it can help him win the national championship. And I think Dayton Fix in a lineup is definitely a strong candidate to help him win a national championship. That being said, we've had a great season of wrestling. We are getting closer to the start of the 4-year schools. The California junior colleges are underway out in California. Before we even get there, we got fires going on near Santa Rosa, which is a program, Santa Rosa Junior College. John Sachs lives out that way, so hope everybody can stay safe there in regards to the wildfires that are going on. I went through some wildfire situations when I was in Colorado Springs with the Waldo Canyon fire that actually came up over the ridge one day, and it looked like the scene in Independence Day. This was probably 5 years ago when I was still living in the Springs, and it was an ominous feeling. And just to drive through some of those neighborhoods where the fire just takes everything, it sets you back a little bit. And you're like, wow. So don't mess with the fire, folks. They say evacuate, get out. Moving forward, we've got, as I said, the college wrestling season is here. As we release this, October 10th, first official day of NCAA wrestling practice. We've got every single Division I dual meet schedule on Mad Talk Online. So if you go to the page, madtalkonline.com, and you see in the top right corner, you will see a scoreboard graphic. Click that. That will actually take you over to almanac.madtalkonline.com. That is a sandbox of all sorts of database lists and things. Well, the scoreboard's always going to be free. So don't worry about hitting some of those things that may be behind a paywall. Now, if there's things behind those paywalls that you see and you want to get access to them, that's an indication that you need to join the team here at Mad Talk Online by going to madtalkonline.com/join the team. There is all sorts of data, results, statistics, searches that I'm continually adding to. So if you want a quick way to solve some bar trivia or argue with people, what I like to do is I like to fact check some things because I get calls all the time. And people say, hey, was so-and-so said he qualified for nationals in this year. Well, I have every D1 qualifier ever in this list. I have every Division I All-American ever in this list. I have every Division I's wrestler's hometown in this list. Now, this is also determined by where they list their hometown, not where we decide their hometown is. So, Mark Hall, you're Apple Valley, Minnesota, as far as anybody else is concerned. So, you get access to all that. So, people call me, and I just sit there and I got my phone. I could pull it up, but nope, never qualified. The guy at the bar is telling you a big old fib. And that has happened. I think every one of us have been in those situations where we've heard somebody say, oh, yeah, he's a state champ. Oh, my buddy wrestled. He's a state champ. Everybody's a state champ. Everybody's buddy that wrestled from somebody that's not necessarily a wrestling person was always a state champ. It's just funny how that works out. I was not. Matter of fact, I never started for my high school team. Barely was on my high school team. That means I'm not going to lie about my accomplishments by any means. So you can fit every single one of my matches lifetime on a Post-it note. Coincidentally, that statistic not in the Matt Talk Almanac. So also some things moving forward with the Division I preview guide that goes on pre-sale. Yeah, we're talking. Practice has just started. And I'm always talking about March in the preview guide. Well, that thing's going to get a little bit of a facelift this year. So if you were one of the fans that were fortunate enough to purchase said digital preview guide, it's going to get a facelift. It's going to have the same information, just going to be laid out a little differently, a little easier for everybody to find some things. The charts and tables are still going to be there. A few more graphical elements. I'm going to be real happy with this. And circling back to the schedules, the scoreboard at Matt Talk Online has always been free. That will still be free. But again, if you want to hit, basically, joining the team can be getting access to that and getting shirts, draft glasses, all sorts of things. But also look at it as a tip jar, because there are a lot of things I'm not getting paid for to do here. There are things that I provide the wrestling community that we need, because there's Essential Spot. You can go through all sorts of websites of various outlets and collect all the scores. Well, do you want to I'll do that for you. Or the daily newsletter. I compile the day's best news for you. You like what you see, borrowing a line from King's X and my buddy Dave Jackson show. If you like what you see, go tell somebody and hit the tip jar, matttalkonline.com/join the team. Now the season's here. I'm excited for it. Wrestling shirt a day is currently at 183, if I'm not mistaken. Joe Caprino at Indiana Matt, he gave it a valiant effort. I'm at 182, actually, as we release it today. Today, it's the Huskies of Southern Maine. Joe Caprino hung with me for 179 days. He actually missed a hashtag one day, botched it the next, but he was consistent. So, at Indiana Matt, send Joe Caprino your condolences for officially losing, but I'm going to keep it going. By this time, you're pot invested, to use a poker term, or pot committed, I think is the term, actually, because I actually suck at Texas Hold'em. But jump back in there. It's a way to promote any program, your high school program. Get out there on Twitter. If you're wearing a wrestling shirt, just take a picture, selfie, and be like, boom, hashtag wrestling shirt a day. The way I like to do it is there's so many different schools that, again, I've bought a lot of these shirts. Some of them have been gifted, and thank you to those schools and organizations that feel like it's cool to send me a shirt. I know I like it. My wife, maybe not so much, because our closet is getting full. But again, I will often purchase shirts from programs that are looking for them as fundraisers and such. So if they're adequately priced and the shipping isn't gonna be just as much as a shirt, and it looks cool, I'll wear it. I'll rock it. You want to send one my way too? I'll rock it too. So I'm all about promoting the sport of wrestling, whether through these podcasts or if it's walking down the street with a wrestling T-shirt, because those are conversation starters. That's what I love doing. When I'm at like a state fair, like in Minnesota, I'll scan the crowd and I'll look for wrestling shirts. I mean, I was waiting at my rant the other night as I was out of waiting for the Applebee's. Yeah, there was a Go for Wrestling sweatshirt that came out. So and they were parked right next to me. So I just talked to them for a little bit, like literally like 30 seconds about wrestling. And that's the stuff I like doing. I like talking about wrestling, people wearing wrestling shirts, because it's the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You can talk to somebody who knows somebody, or at least know of somebody who knows somebody. That's the best thing I love about it. So wrestling T-shirts, in my respect, are not just advocacy, but they're also conversation starters. You can actually, get some new friends out of it. It's like, two, what was the joke? I think it was like 2 women wear the same thing. They get mad at each other. 2 men wear the same shirt. They're like best friends. It's, I think it's a stand-up comic that said something about that one day, but those are the things. Wrestling shirt a day, hashtag wrestling shirt a day. It's my little advocacy program. We've got hashtag grow wrestling out there, as we have 2 new college programs added within the past week in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky Wesleyan in Division II, Midway in the NAIA. And I think I looked this up to post on the Matt.com message boards the other day, if not last night. 54 new programs have started in the NAIA. There's 48 current schools in the NAIA that have started wrestling since 2001. 6 of those have reclassified to Division II, while in Division III, there are 24 new schools since 2011. So we're seeing a rush of it, and I love seeing these new schools. It's creating conversations like the one we had with Nate Shearer on the Division III podcast, the Ice Hour, which you can hear at matttalkonline.com/ice. And it's a good conversation where they've got growth problems. It's like, oh, man, I'm growing out of my shoes too fast. Well, you got to get some new shoes, some new better shoes. So in this case, we've got some revamped regions. Division III is going to be fun, as always, and just working through it. So anyway, I'm going to go back to that schedule thing. I'm still rifling through these schedules. So Division I is complete. I'm about halfway through Division II. The Division III and the NAIAs are going to take me a bit because there's 100 schools I've yet to add into the schedule component. So we've got about a month before the official first whistle blows at the All-Star Classic. Keep an eye out for those press releases from the NWCA. We got 2 matches confirmed on the men's side, 2 matches confirmed on the women. They're going to be coming out. But other than that, that's what I've got for now. Those of you who have expressed thoughts and prayers for my daughter Lucy, who has spent the last couple days in the hospital. She's back home and running around and being a good little 5-year-old. So thank you to you guys out there for your support. Thank you for listening each and every week, sometimes multiple times a week, because I know you've always got time for Short Time.
Show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.